Good evening, everyone. This is our fifth webinar on careers in history. My name is Volker Janssen, and tonight we will be talking about and talking with people in tourism, hospitality, and leisure professions and careers. I am glad to see a pretty good turnout. There's almost 30 people in the audience. That's fantastic. And we have a good crowd of former alumni as well as recruiting experts assembled here tonight. I just want to give you guys a general summary of what these webinars try to do. This is inspired by the realization, hold on, whoever's trying to scroll in the screen, hold off on that for a second here. The webinar series began last semester and began with the realization that many history graduates have very good skills for a lot of different careers, but really don't know how to think about transitioning from their college education to a job. That many have skills they could apply but don't know how to sell. And that a lot of students know they would like to be teachers or work as historians in the field of public history, but could also imagine a lot of other careers. And I know for a fact that people who are trained in history can do a lot of good things in a lot of different fields that offer very interesting opportunities and careers. So for that reason, I launched this series of webinars on careers and history. This is the fifth installment. If you have missed any of the previous ones on teaching, public history, on editing and print media, or on careers in the federal government, all the links are available through email and hopefully soon via our history department website. So that as a summary and introduction to the overall theme of the webinar. Let me check quickly. Can you all hear me, or am I talking to myself? I can see a lot of responses here, so I think that means you can hear me. If you cannot, then I should type in my recommendation to activate your voice, your audio settings up top. Very good. So I want to move to a review of what we're going to do tonight. I'm first going to introduce you to the panel members, and they will introduce themselves. They will tell us a little bit about their jobs. They will talk about their path from college to career, and this should be interesting because we have three fairly young alumni with us who still remember pretty well what it was like to be a graduate student. They will talk about their new work environment, and then we'll talk a little more specifically about how your BA and MA learning goals prepare you for a career, in this case specifically a career in tourism, hospitality, and the leisure industry. We will move towards conclusions with some final lessons and advice, and then we'll have a good amount of time left for you guys to ask your questions and let us know what you need to know and where you need help in getting your own career started. So without further ado then, let me introduce you to the panel members. We have with us tonight Eric Ortega, who now works with the Drake Brewing Company in Northern California. Lindsay Huisentruit, who works with S. Martinelli. You may know that company for their Martinelli cider. We have with us Jonathan Gordon, who works for Trafalgar USA. That's a travel company. And we have Corinne Perez, who works with human relations at the Disney Corporation. I want to give every panel member a brief opportunity to introduce themselves as well. So how about I move from left to right? Eric, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey folks, am I coming in okay here?
Wonderful, yes.
I want to make sure my audio. Great, great. Hi, my name's Eric. I work with Drake's Brewing Company. We're based out of San Leandro, California, which is the East Bay of the San Francisco Bay Area. We're a pretty mid-sized brewing company. We produce probably about 30,000 barrels of beer a year. If you take a barrel, it's about 31 gallons of beer. A pretty eclectic lineup of different offerings. I found the job last summer, sort of on short notice, and I was kind of fortunate because I had just moved up here. And fortunately, things are going very well there. I don't want to get too far into it
Mhm.
too early, but yeah, it's kind of the gist of it.
Great, wonderful, thank you. Lindsay, how about yourself?
Hi. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My name is Lindsay, as Dr. Johnson told you, and I work with S. Martinelli Company, which they produce sparkling apple cider. And the reason I'm working with them is because they're celebrating their 150th anniversary. So they've hired me as their historian and archivist to basically archive everything
Mhm.
that they've had stored in rooms for the last 150 years, which is pretty amazing, and to help them um, put an exhibit in their new
Mhm.
visitor center and to write a book for them. So that's what I'm
That sounds fantastic. So, do you think you have 150 years of work ahead of you there with all the archiving?
doing. It feels like it, but no,
Okay.
they're just keeping me for the next couple years. It's a temporary job.
Okay. Jonathan, tell us about yourself.
Hi guys, my name is Jonathan Gordon. I work for a company called Trafalgar. We basically do motor coach tours all over the world. I started off in their operationals department, but now I work sales. And so my
Hmm.
job mainly consists of uh, maintaining business relations with our different consortia partners and analyzing big data groups.
Hmm. I believe I saw you graduate in 2012, right?
I think that's right. Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay. Hmm. Okay. Well, good to see you again. um, and finally, last but not least, Corinne Perez. Corinne, can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
Oh, wonderful. There you are.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, okay, great. Well, thank you for having me this evening. My name is Corinne Perez. I'm an HR professional and I work at Disney Consumer Products and Interactive Media. And this is a business segment of the Walt Disney Company, which brings the company's stories, characters to life through, different innovative and engaging physical products, but also digital experiences from various different categories, from toys to t-shirts to digital apps to books and even console games. So that's
Hmm.
a little bit about the Disney segment, and I've been with the company for about 3 years and
Hmm.
previously in
Okay.
other HR roles at a couple other organizations.
Okay. Corinne, I hear from a couple of participants here that the volume on your end is very low. So if you can maybe up top adjust your audio and increase that a little bit, I think that may make it easier for the participants to hear you further down in the presentation.
Okay, yeah,
Okay?
is that a little better?
Okay.
Okay.
I think it might be. Um, yeah. Just see what we can do there, or maybe if we speak up a little, then make sure that I could imagine a lot of people want to especially hear what you have to say about recruitment and how to get into a career. But now I want to ask specifically. Sure, I want to ask specifically the alumni who are in their jobs. I want to know whether that's is tourism, hospitality, and leisure that that sounds not necessarily like something um, history students would imagine for themselves. Um, is that a good job? Are you having fun there, Eric?
I'm actually having a blast. It's kind of stereotypical to think that working at a brewing company would be just all fun and games, and it's not. There's actually a lot of hard work, but I mean, being part of a growing industry like we're in right now, and being part of something that's also quite historic with America, especially, or just even human civilization, is Well, there's a lot of historical connections there, but just also being part of the production process, it's a blast. I absolutely love my job. We have a really good community, a really good group of workers, and we stand behind our product. I
Hmm.
don't work for a company that would make bad beer, and
Hmm.
I assure you that Drake's beer is quite superior.
Yeah, Eric, I think at this time you can actually reveal to the people in this room how you got into working for a brewery. This is not an obvious
Well,
thing for an historian to do.
Well, okay. When I began my master's program, I received my bachelor's as well as my teaching credential from Cal State Fullerton, specifically at history and social science. And when I began my master's program, I was told that I should pick a subject that I would absolutely love, otherwise, writing the thesis would drive me nuts. And I figured I knew a little bit more about beer than the average bear, so I kind of ran with it. And my master's thesis was on the California brewing industry, and Dr. Fonson served as a member of my committee during that process.
Right. Yes, for all of you who are listening, um, Eric's story, I think, makes the point that whatever you are interested in history can be your path to a career. Um, Now, Eric loved brewing, and that got him into writing about the emergence of microbreweries in California, and connected that sort of with a new counterculture movement and sort of a new business culture that emerged in California in the 60s, 70s, and thereafter. And I instantly thought, you can turn this into a career. And since then, whenever I've had a student pick an MA thesis, I thought, there's a job here somewhere for you. I had a student who was personally very connected um, to travel cruises and knew a lot about the history of the cruise industry. And I thought, there is a job there for you somewhere. And I think whatever your topic may be, Eric's example may serve you well here. Now, Lindsay, you are buried in piles of paper that Martinelli at some point discarded, and now you have to organize. Is that fun for you?
Um, at times it is because you never know what you're gonna find. I mean, it's 4 generations of Martinellis who have been their pack rats. So
Hmm.
it's been you never know what you're gonna find. But I did focus on public history while I was in school, so I knew that's what I wanted to do. I never thought I'd become a company historian, but I do like that very much now that I'm doing it.
Quick
Hmm.
question. Uh, do you work alone or how does that work?
I work alone right now, so it's pretty daunting. But yeah, usually an archivist has some volunteers or a team of some sort, but it's just me for now. But I do get to sit down with the owner of the company and go through things with me. I do get to interview his family members who he has a bunch of cousins who are on the board there who come in and
Hmm.
go through things, explain things that I can't identify and that sort of thing.
Do you have a regular work schedule, or um, do you work at your own leisure, at your own scheduling?
There's a general time frame. Right now, I am technically a part-time contracted employee. I work on average about 32 hours a week. So I get to
Hmm.
kind of, Monday through Friday, but I get to kind of decide within those
Hmm.
guidelines. I get to.
Hmm. Um, Jonathan, you are now in sales. That's not a job that historians are most likely to drift into. How did you get into that? And are you happy there? Is that fun?
Actually, yeah, I do like my job a lot. And to get where I got is a little, it's an indirect course. After I got my BA, I actually worked in the brewing industry as well, but for a brewery in Placentia. But at the
Hmm.
same time, I was working for Trafalgar in their operations department, and basically I would do histories for their city tours. And so I would take a lot of like the city's history and synthesize it into a half-hour talk, basically something that was easily digestible by someone like a tourist.
Hmm.
And while I was working for the company, basically, I found that I could be useful in a variety of different ways. So yeah, history was a way in, basically through reading, writing, and critical thinking. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's definitely taken me on a different path.
But it seems that you too had the chance at some point to show off your skills a little bit or your knowledge.
Oh yeah, definitely, especially with writing these histories. It was a very arduous task to go in and
Hmm.
revamp a lot of these old stories that weren't being presented properly.
Hmm. Hmm. Now, Corinne, you're not a history graduate, but you're working in a field or with a company at least that I think attracts a lot of our students because Disney is a big player in the region. Um, what is maybe what are some of the best things about working for Disney?
Yeah, so I think, it's a world-class organization. There are, there are all different fields that, if one is passionate about or, wants to pursue, there are so many different opportunities. And I think, I'm in HR, so human resources, and I think one of the things that, not only do I enjoy what I do, but it's something that I've been able to, enjoy working at Disney in HR, but I've also worked in other industries where I've been able to apply the same skills, right, and continue growing. And so,
Hmm.
though I did not have the history major, it's that has been a field where I have found I've been able to translate what I've learned, from one organization to another, including Disney. And I think Disney in particular, it's a really great company. Mobility is encouraged, and there have been a lot of opportunities, for employees to work in either different locations throughout the world, but also very different businesses
Hmm.
from the parks to, like myself, I'm at consumer products and interactive media. So I just think there's a lot of opportunity, and it just really depends on, what someone is looking to do and
Hmm.
explore from a career perspective.
Hmm. Hmm. Wonderful. Thank you all. We're now going to move a little further and talk about how you decided to enter this particular career. Now, Eric already spilled the beans on this, or rather, I had him spill the beans and had him talk about his master's thesis. Um, did you have any other plans, Eric, before we talked you into turning beer into your career?
Well, when I began grad school, I actually really wanted to work with the National Park Service or
Hmm.
even find a job with an educational aspect to it. My teaching credential experience, and I've also done some grad assisting, so I've done some lectures on the university side, kind of
Hmm.
led me to believe that I wanted to do something, literally anything with education. But after working in the public schools on the secondary education level, I kind of decided that the formal, traditional sort of path of becoming a teacher just wasn't for me.
Hmm.
And once I began the route towards becoming a beer historian, I figured, well, maybe there's a way I can kind of blend the two.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I've just felt once I began the history program and began the thesis, just power through it, build some friendships along the way, and that was the kind of key thing too, is that the thesis itself had a very big social aspect to it, and even an oral history aspect. So I was actually forced to go out into the field. Not that I was unwilling to, but
Hmm.
had to go out into the field and really talk to the people who were making the history I was writing about happening. And that
Hmm.
really did help build connections and to a certain amount of a street cred, because part of that is
Hmm.
really have to do with the industry, is that you have to have earn your stripes, so to speak, before they
Hmm.
kind of see you as their own.
Hmm. And you had to cruise around a bit and talk to different breweries before you found your position with Drake Brewing, right?
Yes, that's correct. I interviewed a chief financial officer of Lagunitas Brewing Company up in Petaluma, California, and I interviewed the owner of Sierra Nevada Brewing Company up in Chico, California. Both of whom are very large brewing companies, but still considered what many people call craft breweries, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to the sort of macro conglomerates known as Anheuser-Busch InBev or Miller Coors, which
Mm-hmm.
are sort of the antithesis to the style of beers that smaller breweries, even if they are producing up to 1 million barrels of beer a year,
Mm-hmm.
pale in comparison to a brewery such as Anheuser-Busch in St. Louis, which
Mm-hmm.
produces 16 times that much.
Yeah.
So again, that networking aspect, getting to know people and really getting a lay for the land was really
Mm-hmm.
helpful, especially even if I was completing my coursework in my thesis.
And incidentally, I believe the green behind you in your headshot, that's hops, right?
That is actually a hop farm
Yeah.
in
I thought
Sacramento.
that.
We went on
Okay.
it's Cascade
Um,
hops, yeah.
Lindsay, did you always know that you wanted to be a public historian, or did you always know that you wanted to work for a cider company?
I certainly didn't know I wanted to work for a cider company until this past summer. Um, as for a public historian, I went into history wanting to teach like Eric did. Um, but then I got to my master's studies and I started getting to oral history and public history. And I worked in an archive on campus in the Polk Library, and I interned at the Los Angeles Museum of the Holocaust for a while because my focus was actually Holocaust history.
Mm-hmm.
Holocaust. And so that's when I figured out I really wanted to look at public history.
Mm-hmm. Lindsay, if you can turn your volume up a little, it's hard to hear you.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Um,
So it was oral history that got you interested in this. And how did you find Martinelli's?
I found Martinelli's actually because, again, Eric was talking about networking. I was asking around about public history jobs.
Mm-hmm.
A friend of mine, Mary Flynn, who was also in the master's program, she's teaching now, but she was asked to work there because she's from Watsonville, where the company
Mm-hmm.
is located, and they knew her. And she had the job, and then she decided she wanted to go a different direction. So she said, you should go interview for this. They're looking for people. So
Mm-hmm.
I put together this portfolio of all my, public history work and experience. And
Mm-hmm.
I think I met with them 4 times, which was fun because I was still living in Southern California at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. That's how I found out about it, was through just
Mm-hmm.
talking to people.
I want to tell the audience here that they really need to look at our public history webinar as well, because we have so many people with fantastic careers in public history because of our Center for Oral Public and Oral Center for Oral and Public History and our public history program. There are incredible jobs out there with really very, very different kinds of companies. Thank you, Lindsay. Now, Jonathan, how did you get into the travel business? That wasn't your original plan, was it?
No, it wasn't at all, actually. My original plan was to go to law school, which I did, but that was not a very good fit for me at all. Yeah, it was. I've
How
always
come?
loved to travel, so when I left law school, it's kind of I was naturally led there.
hmm what's wrong with law school? Because law school seems such a good fit for historians, and a lot of law professors tell you that the history students are the best candidates for completing law school successfully.
Yeah, I would say a history major can do fine in law school. It's a very traditional route to take. It just wasn't for me. It was a little dry. It was a little impersonal, and I didn't care for the culture too much.
hmm hmm Um, did you, in retrospect, feel you should have done another major that prepared you more for the travel industry? One could imagine marketing or communications, or did you feel at home after all, even with a history degree?
Yeah, I would say actually, the history degree has still benefited me quite immensely in my profession. I would say that marketing would be a more traditional route into this field. However, I think what at least what pays off in my corner of the industry is to analyze what's going on and then
Mm-hmm.
try to repeat these processes. So we actually look at the data that we can actually collect and where we can capture it and try and turn it into a real analysis. Whereas I would say sometimes maybe a marketing degree might not give you as much insight into that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did your economic history class prove of any benefit?
I would say it did not hurt.
Okay. Jonathan took my economic history course, so that's why I had to ask. Corinne, now I think we have you here for another purpose. So what made you choose your major may not really be the question we need to ask you. But how do people usually end up in the hospitality and tourism and leisure industry? What are the typical paths? What are the typical majors?
Yeah, so I think it can really vary, right? And it depends on where someone wants, what they're interested in, and I think they can probably come from various different majors, um, but but then it's how they enter, that industry, and sometimes it's just a matter of using your network or the people and, have an exploratory conversation. And it could be, a friend a friend who's in the industry, or a family member, or, perhaps if there's a connection through a university or a program or a group that you're involved with, where it allows one to learn more about, that particular industry and the different fields within, and then see, what opportunities are available and maybe a match. So, sometimes it's just leveraging the connections you have and taking whatever background, or major or prior work experience you have, and using that,
Mm-hmm.
to go in and be open to an opportunity that
Mm-hmm.
may present itself, in that. So I think, I really think there could be, one could say that business is, business or finance or accounting, could be fields that lead to that. But I really think it could vary. And I think sometimes it's just the experience that one gets.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it's, an entry level thing where it's in an internship where you learn something, and you can take that and it could lead to another opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So does that
Mm-hmm.
answer
Yes,
that?
it
Does that
does.
help?
Jonathan talked about um, how law school wasn't a fit for him, and Eric talked about the way in which he sort of turned away from the teaching prospects. What would you say are maybe the most common misunderstandings or mistakes that college graduates make in transitioning to a career?
I think feeling that whatever, your major happens to be, that means, that there's a misconception about a specific field you need to enter.
Mm-hmm.
Because I really think, you take your coursework and everything that you learn when you're going through school, but you may come out, in a completely different direction, just depending on whatever opportunity you may find. And a job isn't forever. So, you can take a job out of college where
Hello? I think we may have briefly lost Corin here, but
Had
I
some
want to echo her.
connection issues, making a really good point.
Yeah, and I want to echo that sentiment um, that especially the history students that are listening here often struggle with the preconceived notion that you basically acquire a knowledge, then you then go and apply. And what need for history would there be, say, in tourism, hospitality, and leisure? What need for history would there be in federal government or in other employment sectors that we don't directly seem to cater to? I think that is a mistake, just as it is a mistake, say, for an engineering major to believe that all they need to do is know how to figure out the operation of an engine and design an engine, and that's basically the path to a lifetime of good employment. Both of those assumptions are wrong, and I think the stories of Eric, Lindsay, and Jonathan prove that here. Now, I'm going to move to our next topic and hope that Corinne will then be back. I will ask, I want to tell you all that I do see the questions you have here on the side, and I will give you an opportunity to ask these again when we come to the end. I'm happy to see that both Jonathan and Eric are answering your questions while we are having this presentation. Now, I want to ask a little bit about the work environment that you guys are in. Now, Eric, are there other people in your environment that have history degrees? Do they look at you funny? Do they think this is sort of a misfit?
Well, I'll say that absolutely 0 people that I work with at my company have any sort of history degree. I believe 2 people have sociology degrees, but that is it out of a company of 160 some odd people. I think when I showed up for my interview the first day of, they saw my resume and they saw, oh, this guy has a master's degree in history. What's he doing here? And it was a bit of a shock, but I explained more about my experience in education, and that necessarily follows with public speaking skills. And the specific job I was applying for was a tour guide. It's a rather simple position, but in that one position, there's actually a lot of room for growth. And literally by growth, I mean in any different department that you apply yourself to. Tour guides at the company have become lab techs, barrel-aged beer production managers, human resources, and event staff. So I knew that by getting my foot in the door at the bottom level, even if it was being just a lowly tour guide, which the tour guide position I actually quite enjoyed, but if I, as I said, earned my stripes, pound the pavement, talk to the right people, and just work my ass off, then eventually would create something well worthwhile. And as of right now, I'm actually in charge of the tour program and in writing employee training materials. And they realized that my history degree was more than just about history.
I think that's a great lesson again. Corin, do you agree that maybe college students often have a hard time accepting the fact that they still need to begin with a position sort of that is maybe slightly below their expectations?
Yeah, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, just about.
Okay, good. Yes, no, I mean, I think sometimes there's an expectation that one, you have to be extremely clear on what your major is. And sometimes that changes, throughout the college years, and you may go in deciding, wanting to major in one thing and coming out with something completely different. And I think, the same thing is when you're kind of entering the professional world, right? You don't have to have the first job you take does not mean that that's what your entire career is going to be in. And I think it's more about finding what you have interest in, knowing what your strengths are, and having a sense of the type of work and the direction that you'd like to, try something. And then just using, your networking and the people both from a university standpoint, from a personal standpoint, peers, and when you find something that is interesting, saying, I'm going to give this a try, and that may be for, could be 1 year, it could be 5 years, it could be more, but you never know, it won't be until you actually try something that you'll see what you have, more interest in, or if maybe you didn't like that so much, but there were components of a certain job that you did like, and you become aware of something else you might want to try. So it's all about, it's a path, and it changes, and it doesn't mean you have to pick something and stick with it forever. It's just figuring out, what feels right and what you enjoy, and kind of tailoring to your strengths and where you want to develop.
Jonathan and Lindsay, I don't mean to bypass you. I'll come back to you. Jonathan, I wonder whether you had a similar experience where your employer sort of later, after they had hired you, figured out, hey, he is an historian that can come in handy.
Well, when I was initially hired into the operational side, there were actually a few history majors in that department. Uh, one of our one of our main roles was hiring tour managers, and history majors, if they're
Yeah.
personable, do very, very well in that position.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then when I transferred into the sales department, I think they saw that I could be a little more analytical and critical thinking, and I think they actually responded to that very well. And
Mm-hmm.
the ability to sell an idea sometimes is best done in the written form, and
Mm-hmm.
I think history definitely gave me that ability.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, Lindsay, you said you work alone. You're the only historian at Martinelli's.
Yes.
Do they understand what it means to be an historian? Do they, um, or do they not get it?
Well, yes and no. I think there's a lot of things that they do understand because I'm working for a family-owned
Mm-hmm.
business, in the same family for 4 decades. And so John Martinelli, who's my boss,
Mm-hmm.
he takes his family history and the history of this business very seriously. So he definitely appreciates my expertise. And
Mm-hmm.
so he doesn't know everything about the discipline of history or our approach or, how you preserve documents or things like that. But that's
Mm-hmm.
that's why. So he appreciates it, but he doesn't always know,
Mm-hmm.
exactly what's going on. But
Mm-hmm.
I fill him in.
Um, I, are you afraid that they may have unreasonably high expectations about what you are able to put together?
So far they haven't. I have been worried about that.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, there's also a board with his cousins on it, and some of them are, they're not historians, but one of them has like a photo. She works for a photo company. They have a photo archive, so she has,
Mm-hmm.
input on that. Sometimes someone asks me if something should be carbon dated. I
Mm-hmm.
don't do that. So you just never know what you're gonna get. But so far, nothing unreasonable.
Yeah, I have to say we don't teach carbon dating.
No,
Uh,
we go through different disciplines.
um, what kind of important jobs did you have to develop on the job that really were not part of the major, where you thought, "Oh wow, I'm really stretching myself here." Um, Whoever wants to go first.
Well, if I could go ahead
Yeah, Eric.
speak to that. Well, a couple of funny stories. The first one I probably relay would be one of my first days on the job. I was helping out the bar with just bar backing. Some things you do in downtime is literally any job you can do between tours. And someone vomited in the restroom.
Oh, okay.
And so, not to be graphic, but it was kind of a strange contrast between having just earned my master's degree a month before, and here I am in a brew pub restroom mopping up a 21-year-old's vomit. I just had
Hmm.
to think to myself, okay, I am definitely working towards something, but this is not
Hmm.
not indicative of that.
Well,
Um,
um, my my wife has a story. She's an art historian, ending up working in the fashion industry, and she ran a shop in Las Vegas, and a very wealthy buyer entered the room and immediately recognized her as the manager. And she asked why, and he said, "Well, you were the only one who picked up, you know, little bits of trash that otherwise, all the other staff just walked past." It's that willingness to do what it takes to get the operation going, to move forward without being too concerned whether that is really your portfolio, whether that is really your responsibility. I think that makes you stand out. And in your case, I think it was a little nastier than having to pick up pieces of paper. Um,
yeah, it was.
Jonathan, did you have the experience that you really had to stretch yourself beyond your knowledge?
Oh, with my most recent role, yes, because I have a team that works under me, so
Hmm.
yeah, being in charge of people was a bit different for me, and also I had to learn a skill set I didn't really have before, which was managing big data, which I did via Excel initially. So yeah, definitely
Mm-hmm.
not a history skill.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Corin, would you say that learning skills on the job is one of the crucial things that sort of identify good career prospects?
Yeah, I do. I think that's a big part of, just one, like your own development because you can take you can take courses upon courses of information and people learn in different ways. So one
Mm-hmm.
might find that learning, they have a different experience learning in the classroom than someone else, but I think it's the hands-on experience where you're actually getting in and doing the job where you really start to learn you know
Mm-hmm.
how to deal with people, where it's managing people, or how you might find yourself stretching yourself. You could be dealing with conflict in different ways. You could be, taking on a mentoring or a counseling role, depending on, what one's job is. Or you may have to work, somewhere where you have multiple hats and you may be doing things that you just did not expect or may not have been detailed out in a job description. So I think that's where you can get just a lot of really good experience in terms of what different jobs are like, and kind of round out just skill sets in general for whatever next opportunity you might have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, you know, a participant just raised the point that we should hear a little bit more about the things you did beyond just your college work, the work experiences you got on the side that helped you get your job. Jonathan, did you do anything during your college years work-wise that sort of helped you beef up your resume? One of the participants here, Professor McLean, pointed out earlier that really as he wrote, bang up resume and cover letter is crucial to even getting in the door. And I think part of having a good resume is having good things to put on there. Outside of doing, good as a student, what else did you have there?
Well, yeah, I think having some experience on your resume definitely is important, and I think what's more important than that is, just start exploring potential ideas that just might be a seed while you're doing your BA. So when I was working in tourism, um, my entry position was very lowly. I was mainly like contracting hotels, and that meant just like talking on the phone with suppliers. But it was a good way to get my foot in the door, and I think an employer will really respond to enthusiasm, because I think sometimes, like especially in the corporate world, it can be a bit jaded. They can have a lot of people working for them that aren't necessarily as enthusiastic. And I
Hmm.
think if you take that initiative, they really respond to it sometimes.
Hmm. So it started as a job that you did while you were in college.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I got that job through a friend of mine, and
Hmm.
I was able to speak with the vice president of operations and said, basically, here's what I can do. Do you have anything for me? And
Hmm.
it was, it wasn't a glamorous position, but it definitely like segued to where I am now.
Hmm. Hmm. Um, Lindsay, you had mentioned that you um, had done oral histories for the Museum of the Holocaust, correct?
I didn't do oral histories for them. I did intern for them.
Oh, I'm
I
sorry,
did.
you interned. What other jobs did you do that you think really helped your resume and helped you get that job?
I I was lucky enough that I figured out, I think about a year and a half into the master's program, what it is I wanted to do. So I was
Hmm.
able to weave my experience in with my studies. So I found jobs like being an archivist in the digitization center in the public library. That was great fun.
Hmm. Hmm.
I did conduct oral histories. I did that through Dr. Granada's her oral history
Hmm.
class. And then I got a job with COF editing transcripts.
Hmm.
I focused my thesis on oral history, so that
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so it
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
Sorry, I kicked you off your train of thought. Well, I do want to point out, Lindsay had an experience that a lot of other students have in the history department, and that is that cough can be your first step in your work experience. That editing transcripts there, or working in the organizing the archive, sometimes working on campus can be your first step especially towards public history positions. Um, and Eric, I know that before you worked at Drake Brewing, you did a lot of, well, not jobs, but volunteer work, right? I mean, you engaged in all sorts of, I don't know, brewing conventions. Is that correct?
Yes, I knew that if I was going to be making a social aspect to my thesis, especially having the oral histories, or at least having the reputation to gain access to people who are really important in this movement, I would have to, again, pound the pavement, tap shoulders, and donate my time. And I ended up volunteering for several beer fests.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, what you do is you volunteer for a specific brewery or the event organizers, and then you basically pour beer for about 4 to 5 hours at an outdoor location. And that's essentially a good way to network. You meet people who are within the industry, representatives of the companies, and you get to share stories, and you get to find new contacts that would eventually lead you to new opportunities. I also
Mm-hmm.
took up homebrewing, and that's actually how I kind of know John. I know he's an excellent homebrewer,
Mm-hmm.
and
That's
I
true.
spoke with him. He's a phenomenal homebrewer, and I met with him a couple of times, and we shared a couple of beers together. And he was one of the many people I got to know in this sort of odyssey, kind of going down the well of what later became my career in this industry.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you two are a good group to invite over. um,
So
I am not a brewer, but I appreciate their work very much. Um, Now, Lindsay, I got a question here. Whether you can explain in a little more detail what you do in the archives. If I understand you correctly, you are actually making the archive. Is that correct?
Right now I am, yeah, there isn't an archive existing, so I am going through trunks and boxes and scanning photos, and I am putting them in acid-free folders, labeling boxes, and I am cataloging, basically organizing kind of a little archive
Lindsay,
for.
can you speak a little more closely to your microphone?
Yes, could you hear what I was saying? Should I
That's much
repeat
better
it?
now, yes.
So yes, I'm going through boxes and trunks and pulling out papers and letters and photographs, and I'm cataloging them in
Hmm.
an archive.
Yeah, so that is really, I mean, that is a skill and a job that you really specifically trained for with cough. So that's a really nice direct application. Um, I'm going to move us on to our next topic here, if that's okay. Um, we have, as you know, a way of organizing the mission for the BA and the MA, and you have here a list of the goals that we are striving for our students to master by the end of their BA experience and their MA experience. And when you look at this, I wonder whether you can pick some and say, okay, here I specifically use this on a good regular basis. Um, so I'd like to see that, because I think our students need to know, I think you all here listening would like to know how the things you learn in your BA and your MA directly apply on the job.
Well, I could go ahead and kick us off if you don't mind.
Yeah, thanks, Eric.
Uh, I see BA goal number 3 is the to enhance the ability to communicate historical knowledge and understanding orally and in writing. I think this really ties into interpersonal skills, which is something that I actually feel as though I learned very much during my bachelor's program, and to a greater extent during my master's.
Hmm.
Being able to communicate effectively an idea or some sort of historical knowledge, or really just any point you're trying to convey to another person is absolutely necessary, and especially in uh, careers of tourism, hospitality, and leisure. People want to be, to a certain extent, entertained.
Hmm.
And the best historians and the best professors I've ever had the pleasure of taking a class with were able to hold someone's attention. And
Hmm.
being able to hold attention is worth its weight in gold if you know how to do it correctly, if you can do it quickly, and if you can do it over a prolonged period of time.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think that my BA led me to my teaching credential, which further enhanced my abilities to speak to large groups of people, convey knowledge, try to adapt it to different levels of understanding, which is something I still do on a day-to-day basis, and it's only gotten better since that time.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, and Eric, you were pretty active in the BA History Honor Society Phi Alpha Theta, right?
Yes, I was the president of a History Students Association, and I was a longtime member of the Phi Alpha Theta Historical Honor Society. And
Hmm.
those organizations in particular, they really press students to go to academic conferences across the country. I've known some students have gone overseas to present the research, and
Hmm.
it's really sort of putting you up on stage and forcing you to show your work and explain it to a diverse group of people who may not understand it or may understand it, and then hold you accountable to that knowledge and making sure you're accurate.
Hmm.
And I really appreciate those times I've been able to go out to those conferences
Yeah.
and really kind of hone that ability to talk to crowds.
Hmm. Corin, would you say that these co-curricular activities during students' college careers, like being president of a student association, that these are maybe underappreciated skills and activities, and that students should take this more seriously as a part of job preparation?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value to, being involved, whether it's volunteering or being part of a group or leading, within a group because, there are things that you learn from that, such as presenting or working through something, whether it's analysis or problem solving or working with others, so collaboration. And so I think, those are things that whether one realizes that are really, you know,
Hello? Oh, did we lose you? Did you accidentally switch off your microphone? Um, I think Corinne may have accidentally switched off her microphone, or something else went wrong here. Um,
Volker, do
but
you mind if I say something to that?
please, yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just to piggyback on what Corinne was saying. I think aside from the skills that you learn doing these extracurricular programs, it also shows initiative, and I think a lot of people really respect that. And I think even if you volunteer your time, just to do something that's a little outside, it's a little somewhat self-sacrificing. I think people see that and they understand that this is someone with a little bit of drive.
Yeah, no, I think it's true, especially if you do things that you care about, where you put your time in because it matters to you. I think that's one of the best ways in preparing you for a job in a field that you care about as well. I mean, that's a clear case with Eric. Look, you love to travel, and that got you into a career. So I think the connection is pretty clear here on our panel. Um, I want to see Corinne. Are you back?
I am back. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I may have cut out.
Oh, well, something's not working on that end. Um, well, we can go back to that point, but in the meantime, I was wondering whether either Lindsay and Jonathan see any of these goals here where they say, you know what, I'm really using this.
Okay, can you hear me?
Okay, Corinne, we'll give it one more try. Yes.
Okay, for some reason I keep losing the connection. Yes, so I do. I mean, I think there is a lot of value in, participating in or having a leadership position of some sort in groups throughout college or before you are, looking to, take on a job.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think there are things that you can learn, such as working with others, so collaboration or, um, you know, analysis of some sort or
Mm-hmm.
leading a group of people. Um, and I think you may not, in interviewing for a job, coming out of college or preparing to do that, I think, you can speak to your participation you know, in a group or doing, some type of work without having, being able to point to a job to say, here's what I did. So again, you're speaking to, what you've done and what you can contribute and the value that you can bring,
Mm-hmm.
when you're speaking, to either other companies about, something that you're, an opportunity you're pursuing within their company.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, Lindsay, Jonathan, do you see these goals here and think, yeah, I'm doing this?
Yes, I do. Um, I think all of my um, historical research, especially my thesis, um, prepared me for what I am doing now.
Mm-hmm.
And that has also prepared me to be able to communicate my historical knowledge, which I'm going to have to not necessarily just do orally, but also through this exhibit, I have to create for the Martin in order to
Mm-hmm.
help other people understand the importance of this history. So yeah, I think it's
Yeah,
all necessary for what I'm doing.
yeah. Jonathan.
Yeah, I would say definitely promoting intellectual inquiry. I think I brought a degree of critical analysis to my department that was lacking before. It seems
Mm-hmm.
things were a little more haphazard before, and so a lot of what I do is also looking at our historical data to see what's precedent, what we can expect,
Mm-hmm.
and what we can hope to, profit off of later.
Mm-hmm. One thing that our students do really well, and that's not really expressed clearly in these goals, is the ability to, is storytelling, basically. Telling a good story that makes clear who does what to whom, when, where, and why. That's at the core of history. And I would say, when I think of the work of your operation, Corinne, in Disney products, it's all about telling a good story. So I think any history major should keep in mind that their ability to make sense of an event or a circumstances or a product is something that can appeal in a variety of settings.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think storytelling actually probably goes beyond that too. Um, I think when you think about, people in finance roles,
Hmm.
and there's a component to storytelling for them as well, as
Right.
they're explaining whether there's growth or a decline, um, you know, so, and I know even in an HR function, there's
Hmm.
a component of storytelling when you're looking at employee retention or, different occurrences throughout the year when you're looking at engagement levels of employees. So I think storytelling is probably, you make a great point, um, but it's probably beyond just, stories in themselves,
Hmm.
for entertainment even.
Hmm. Right, a coherent account that explains cause and effect would maybe be a more broader description of what
Yeah.
would also apply, say, for um, making sense of the financial performance of a company over time. Um,
Yep.
Someone here among the participants has made the point that storytelling also plays a role in interviewing and networking. Um, and I think that's absolutely correct. Um, Now I'm going to move us to a last opportunity to sort of dispel, or not dispel, disperse lessons and advice, the things you really would like students to know now that you are on the other side of this divide. Lindsay, I'm going to take you first. What would you like to tell current history majors and history M.A.s about how to make that transition?
I mean, making the transition, I would go back to, I know we already talked about networking and experience, but
Mm-hmm.
do what you can now to prepare yourself for basically what it is you want to do in your future and find out what's out there.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to your professors, talk to other students.
Mm-hmm.
Eric talked about getting involved with history clubs. That's great. We also got involved with, it was just a student project that we did for the library. We got together and we created an exhibit that was in the library about World War II.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think all of you sort of have in your own stories um, the proof that you need to think about what you might have a passion for early on. You can't wait for graduation and then think, okay, what am I going to do next? I think you should
Otherwise, that
begin this 2-3 years before.
yeah. Otherwise, that transition is going to be much harder because once you graduate, you're going to have to start figuring it out, and then you don't have that nice resume started,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
getting going there. So,
Corin, do you think that early an early preparation for a career is sort of one of the features of a successful um, transition from college to career, that people begin this process a year and a half, do things like, oh, I don't know, participate in a webinar on careers in history?
I do, because I think what it shows is that someone is, they have interest, they're committed to doing things, that they're curious and wanting to learn. Um, and so I think, some of the things that one can do just to prepare is to do research, listen in on webinars like this, talk to people that you can connect with, whether it's, through the university or your professors or your peers or friends, and get involved in different projects where you have interest so
Mm-hmm.
that you can get, just different types of experience that then you can speak to, but also figure out, what you are interested in, what you do have a passion for and you really enjoy and you would want
Mm-hmm.
to at least try out, when thinking about, a step in your career.
Mm-hmm.
And just keep
Mm-hmm.
an open mind because you never
Yeah.
know what you might enjoy.
Right, and this is, I think, one of the themes I'm pushing with students, to keep an open mind, because a lot enter the history major or the history MA thinking that there's really only 2 or 3 things you can possibly do with history. And one of the things I'm trying to bring across with webinars like this is that there are so many things that you can do. Now, Jonathan, if you could speak to the history students now, and you can, what do you think is the most important thing you can tell them about making a successful switch to a career, or
Yeah,
what might even be a good fit for them in tourism,
yeah,
in the tourism industry?
I would say one of the biggest things you don't want to do is pigeonhole yourself. Keep yourself open. Like Corin was saying, you don't know what you're really gonna love until you go out and try it. You have to kind of just expose yourself, and yeah, just don't limit yourself. By the time you're done with your history program, you've learned to master a skill somewhat. You can take that same application and many other skills after that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you see within the field of tourism? Do you see a lot of places where, someone with history could be useful? I mean, you clearly found your niche, but could you see other places where you'd say, yeah, I mean, someone with history would really do a good job here?
Definitely. I think history plays out like a lot of other liberal arts degrees. You just gotta pander to your strengths, which will be reading, writing, critical thinking, argument.
Mm-hmm.
and history will provide you with a very unique perspective on how to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's as many of us out there with that knowledge base, and so I would say
Mm-hmm.
exploit it, use it.
But I would say that, one of the things you also have as an historian is either the knowledge about another country or the humility about your ignorance on the other country that will make you careful in how you describe, how you promote, and how you enter that place as a new place of business.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that 100%. It's kind of like a cultural empathy. I don't think it's
Right.
exclusive to history, but I definitely think it's taught within history. I think
Right.
to be self-reflective and, not just not culturally
Hmm.
focused on just yourself.
Yeah. Um, Eric, what advice do you have?
Well, I could go back in time and tell myself something early in my history program would be to keep going, but develop something else along the way. And it was only later in my master's program that I really found my direction towards the brewing industry, especially with public speaking, education materials, things like that.
Hmm.
If I could go back and tell young Eric anything, it'd just be tear into literally anything you could about this new facet that you want to learn about. And need not be beer. I taught myself a little bit how to make beer, how to be a bartender, how to work with draft line systems, yada yada yada. But
Hmm.
if you are a foodie, you like different types of foods, maybe take up some cooking classes, or maybe try some home cooking and read some books about it. Maybe go to a seminar about cooking. If you like
Hmm.
coffee, there's a huge amount of literature about the coffee trade going back for centuries.
Hmm.
There's so much information about any given topic that you might be leading yourself towards. If you can
Hmm.
find it early on, then you can gear yourself towards becoming essentially a master of that knowledge. And
Hmm.
it's a very pleasing thing to be able to go into an industry which at first you may seem as an outsider, but once
Hmm.
you get a chance to start talking and they actually hear your voice, then they realize there's something more to this person than meets the eye. And he's not, quote unquote, just a historian. Because we're never
Hmm.
just historians, but it's up to us to illustrate that.
I think that's a great point. We're never just historians. We always know about something else. And I think your history makes it very clear. And the examples that you gave, I think, can be an inspiration for people who say, look, I love coffee. And I love the environment that comes with coffee roasting, coffee production, and yeah, Starbucks seems like a good company, but I don't necessarily want to spend my life as a barista. um, Knowing the history of coffee, knowing the topic in and out and over time, gives you credibility and gives you a knowledge that opens doors in the way that it has for you. And I think um, there are probably some good career steps ahead of you within the company there, Eric. Um, Now, yes, Corin.
I was just going to add one thing. I think that was a great point, and I think it's, you know, history can be like becoming so knowledgeable in a certain area that you become a subject matter expert. And
Hmm.
I think whichever industry or job you're in, you know, people knowledge is extremely valuable, and people will come to you seeking it, knowing, you know your business, and you are, um, you can share so much. So I think there's a lot of value in that.
Hmm. Yes, thank you. I think we should now turn to the participants and ask for their questions. Now, I wrote down a couple of questions that I caught on the way. Mary asked how the job affect your family life. Is the job so demanding that family life is not happening, or do you have flexibility in your job that makes it easier? Any
Well,
of you?
uh,
I mean,
yeah, I
for me,
can. Sorry, go ahead.
I can say right now my job, because I said before I'm a part-time contracted employee. I do have that flexibility, but I do need to, because I have to pay rent. I do need to make up some of that time. So I do have another job that I do from home. But so far, it's been it hasn't been so bad. It's been okay.
Hmm.
Then again, I don't have
Hmm.
kids or anything, so that's easier too. But yeah, so
Right.
far, so bad.
Hmm.
Well, in order to get this job, I had to move to Northern California. All of my family's down in Southern California, and the community that I had been a part of was also down in Southern California. But I consciously made the decision to sacrifice that aspect to for career goals, personal growth goals. And
Hmm.
to the respect, I still keep in touch with close friends and family. It's just a matter of you don't see them as often as you do. So,
Yeah.
to a certain extent, in my experience, there were some sacrifices that I needed to make, but in the long run, I know this was the correct decision to make as far as my future growth.
Yeah, I will say that that is true because just last week I got into my office and I found a six-pack there that Eric had left for me. So yes, he does keep in touch. Jonathan, does your job require a lot of travel, or are you mostly based here?
Um, well, it does require a fair amount of travel, and it has been taxing, in certain times in my life. For instance, I was in Peru for a couple of weeks while my wife and I were planning our wedding. It wasn't the most ideal
Mm,
time, but life kind of throws you those curveballs. So yeah, there have been
yeah.
times, but for the most part, it hasn't been terrible at all.
Tell me that you made it back in time for the wedding.
Yes, with plenty of time.
Okay, good. Okay. um, I I think Corin made the point earlier, at the very beginning, that flexibility in terms of location is a requirement, and if not a requirement, certainly an asset. Is that true, Corin?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I think work-life balance is really important. I know I love nothing more than getting to spend time with my family and friends, and I also care a lot about my job. But I think it's and sometimes it feels like I'm working more than what I would like. Um, but I think I always try to get back on track, make sure that I'm happy with whatever that balance is at that point in time. And I've gone through years where I have worked, through the weekends and all through the week, of course. Um, but I definitely think there's something to a work-life balance, just to you know being able to recharge and still enjoy doing what I'm doing, through
Hmm.
work.
Hmm. Um, I will say that I was happy to see Eric and Lindsay go, not because I wanted them out of Southern California, but because I really appreciated their willingness to go where they needed to go in order to have the jobs that they wanted. And I think if you are right now a history student and you do not have children and you are not married, um, you should realize that this is the time where you are the most mobile. Once you marry, and certainly once you have children, your ability to move around and pick up job opportunities because they happen to be there 500, 1,000, 2,000 miles away, or if it happens in another country, the time after college is the time where that is most likely to happen and where it's easiest for you to accommodate. Um, Now, another question was about the time to degree, but I think this is a question that you guys all answered in the chat room. And then someone else asked whether a double major can help. I guess that very much depends on what you want to do with a double major, and what the double major is. You suggested French and history. I can see all sorts of ways in which both French and history together make a whole lot of sense. Um, in tourism, I think there are jobs where you could possibly make use of your French and your history, and I think Jonathan could probably give some advice on that. If you go back to our federal government webinar, we have students who are working with the State Department, where both history and French, let's say, at the embassy in Paris, would be quite useful. So you can think of a variety of ways in which the double major is useful, and that of course is not limited to French. Um, I'm happy now to entertain other questions as they appear in the chat room. So participants, please do not be shy. If you have specific questions for the panelists about their particular companies, their careers, this is the time to put them up. If you want to establish contact, start your networking, this is the good time to do this. I do want to point out that students, I think, and Corinne will back me up on this, need to understand the difference between networking and schmoozing. Right, Corinne?
Yes.
What's the
Yeah, I
difference?
think, you, so I think, you know, networking is, thinking about the types of questions you want to ask and what you want to really learn about and how, certain people you might meet, how they might be able to help or support you in, learning more about or making contact, right, with
Mm-hmm.
someone who's going to help in, you know, your career or professional capacity,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe it doesn't even have to be necessarily in that light. And I think when I think of schmoozing, um, I guess I think of that as just being more casual, can be maybe very informal, and where you're not really, you know, um, perhaps you're not putting as much thought in terms of, right, like a direction that you would like to take or something that you would like to get out of a conversation with somebody or a certain
Mm-hmm.
outcome, maybe to be able to
Mm-hmm.
help you, connect with somebody else.
Mm-hmm. We got a question here that I think speaks specifically to this challenge. Jennifer asks, how can you start networking as a student? Um, and I think, as one participant responds, this would be the first step towards networking, building contacts right here in this webinar. Another one, I think, another way in which you could start networking, say, within the Disney Corporation would be maybe trying to get a job at Disney, or what else can you recommend, Corinne? How can you start networking as a student?
Yeah, I think also there are different groups. I know that there was an HR group that I joined when I was first starting to learn about HR because I didn't have any school background or educational background on HR.
Mm-hmm.
So it just depends in terms of, just research online. What groups are, perhaps within tourism and hospitality, that come up when you do research, where you could go and meet either people who are already in the industry, people who are interested in getting into the industry. Um, I know someone mentioned LinkedIn. LinkedIn's another great. I mean, it's LinkedIn, I think, has so many people who are willing to
Mm-hmm.
connect with one another
Mm-hmm.
to share information. Um, that I think that's another good platform.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I mean, different groups even within the university, right, as well.
Mm-hmm. Right. Um, how many times does the average applicant apply to Disney? Is a question from Stephanie. Corinne, do you have that data?
So, so I do not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think it just depends. I mean, they have there is a website, Disney Careers website where they post all opportunities across the company from, full-time positions to part-time to internship opportunities. And so I think it's, you know, working on your resume to a point where it highlights different areas of experience, right, that you've had, and
Mm-hmm.
then making a connection with, a recruiter. And it may not be like that position may not be the one that, may be right for you, but I think it's making a connection, sharing your background, your experience, the direction or what you're looking for to do, and then seeing, what recommendations they might have,
Mm-hmm.
or what you may want to think about, whether it's continuing exploring that particular opportunity or whether there are others, that may be a match.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't say that there's a certain, I don't know that there's a certain number of times,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I think it's just, taking advantage of the opportunities when you can actually connect with someone
Mm-hmm.
and have a conversation and really share about yourself, but also, ask questions to draw information and more knowledge from, a recruiter's end in terms of what can they share with you that they're looking for or the managers that they're working for are looking
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in candidates.
Um, there's a question from Kimberly, who I believe is probably not a history major, but has a certificate in HR management. She wants to know how hard it is to get in with no experience. I guess that depends on where you want to get in. If it's getting into the first experience, I think maybe you need to set your bar a little lower. Corin, what do you think?
Yeah, I had zero HR experience when I got my first job, and it was, you know, and I did end up getting my HR management certificate as well, but I came in at a very entry level, and there really wasn't experience that was needed, and it was the expectation, of the company that they were willing to take someone who, I was eager to learn. I'd had some experience in other types of jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I'd gotten my degree and I was ready to just jump in. So I think sometimes you can find entry level positions where you don't need experience. It's just someone believing in you, and kind of what you're offering and how you're branding yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to offer an opportunity. I think the other side is, being able to look for, more learning experiences such as internships where you can get more experience before, taking the next step
Mm-hmm.
into,
Mm-hmm.
still, a entry level job.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I think
There was a,
coming in with a certificate is valuable.
I would
Everyone comes in
imagine.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a question early on about advice on resumes or cover letter, and I think this is a time where I have to um, do away with the anonymity of one of our participants, Marisa Perez Amord. She is with the Career Center and has been active here in the chat room on the right. Thank you, Marisa. She makes the point that the Career Center does exactly that kind of help all the time, and that whether you are a history major in this webinar or in any other department, you should turn to the Career Center for the help that they can give you. The events that they sponsor, and this is not one of them, but the events that they sponsor throughout the semester often address the resume and the cover letter issue. They also provide individual assistance, I believe, and Marisa specifically is the career specialist for the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. So the question here is how about getting an AA, an associate's? What is an AA? Is it an associate's degree in history? Um, well, I have to say I wouldn't know about this since we at Fullerton don't give out AAs, right? Um, so I think at that level, mm, I, I I don't know to
If
what
I could,
extent. Yeah, please.
well, my AA actually, before I became a bachelor's student at Cal State Fullerton, I attended Fullerton Junior College or Fullerton
Hmm.
College just down the road, and I received my associates in arts and history. This
Hmm.
was back in 2006, 2007, so I'm not sure if the climate is just as it was as when I did it.
Yeah.
But my recommendation is if you're seeking about getting an AA in history, I really do believe it should be a step towards getting into a program where you can get a bachelor's in arts.
Hmm. I will say that at the AA level, one strength of your training would be your ability to write, certainly improving your ability to write and to communicate and to synthesize information. So that is a skill that you also learn at the AA level. Um, any other questions? Happy to address those. maybe not right now. One job hunting guide that I would recommend is Thesis, Professor McLean. And that's all he said. That's all he wrote. Knock 'em dead.
Is that a written work or is that
Who's the author of Knock 'em Dead?
Oh, it is actually a written
2016 edition. Does religion matter? Well, in the broadest possible sense, for many people it does. In terms of career choices, I am almost certainly sure that Corin will tell us that your religion is not of any issue when it comes to your job application. Is that correct, Corinne?
Yes.
Yeah, the Equal Employment Opportunity Act certainly shouldn't disbar you from any employment position. However,
Yes.
if you're looking specifically for a job in possibly working with the Catholic Church or a certain religious institution, then certainly being of that particular religion helps, I imagine.
That would make sense. Yes. So Professor McLean recommends Martingale Knock 'em Dead, the 2016 edition. Sounds like good advice to me. I do want to stress again that one of the strengths of this particular panel here is the diversity of careers that they're found with history. Now we have a particular type of job here, tourism, hospitality, and leisure, but this is nothing that is in any way close to what people usually connect with history, and yet you all do something that is specifically related to your training and indeed to your historical passion or historically related passion. And for all you history majors and M.A.s out there, if you have a topic that you care about, try to work on ways in which you can connect this to the life around you. Try to connect this to a volunteering activity, a social network, and out of that maybe an internship, and out of that a career. Because the skills that you build, the knowledge that you acquire about what you care about, and the skills that you build in writing, communicating, storytelling, connecting cause and effect, all these things will come together then in a path that is very much your own. In the same way that Eric made it into a brewing company, writing about the history of beer. For Lindsay to end up building an archive for a cider company that she had never thought of. Probably didn't even drink Martinelli cider before that. And Jonathan, who actually is now shaping his work environment and bringing in a little more coherent thought and organization that comes from his own historical training. So you all can build these individual paths for yourself. I think that was a good concluding word, wouldn't you say? If we have
sounds great.
If we have no new questions, and of course now they kept coming in. Devin Quinones was about to write something, and I want to give him that chance because we have another minute or so here. So Devin, focus on that keyboard. Okay.
Well, I can probably relay a short story before.
My bad.
Talking
Okay.
about
Oh, how burdensome! You had to explain that. Okay, Eric, did you wanna follow my concluding word with a story?
There's a quick story
Yes.
about kind of relating historical stories or anecdotes with the jobs we do on a day-to-day basis. A story I learned about during my research was a health study done in 1854 in London about a poisoned well struck with cholera.
Mm-hmm.
And they found that the only people not being infected by the well were monks living at abbeys inside this district of London
Mm-hmm.
who drank nothing but beer that they brewed themselves at the abbey.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that story just on a whim during my research, but every time I take a group on a tour through the brew house, when we get to the boil kettle, I actually explained why they found out that cholera was a waterborne disease instead of what they thought was an airborne disease.
Hmm.
And for some reason, that one particular story always just causes eyes to light up. It's like, oh, I never really thought about that. And you think about it, why did they always drink beer in medieval times? They didn't trust the water, but they didn't understand why until 1854 in that one particular study.
Yeah,
And
that's
just these little stories and anecdotes,
yeah.
they help us on a day-to-day basis, and you'd be surprised just knowing the history in many different facets and ways.
Yeah.
It makes your job a lot easier.
I'm sure that applies in a lot of different ways. We did have two more questions here. What are some job starters for history majors, Jennifer? That is a very broad question, given that I'm running a series on 10 webinars on 10 different fields of jobs for history majors. So I think working at COF is one of the best ways if you want to prepare for a public history career. Thinking about teaching assistantships is a good one if you're interested in teaching. And after that, it very much depends on what you see yourself doing in the future. If you are interested in civil service and government positions, then internships at the local government or state government levels are good starters. I always recommend our Washington, D.C. program. After that, it's a matter of what you are interested in. Now, Lindsay, one of our presenters, raised her hand because she wants to say something.
I just wanted to add that we keep saying cough, but I don't know if we've explained to some people what cough is. It's
That is a good point. Yes.
Center for Oral and Public History, COPH.
Yes.
So I just want to make sure people knew what that was.
Yes. Ivan Zambrano, or Ivan Zambrano, apologies if I mispronounce your name. What about political science? Any insight on that in regards to career advancement? Well, I feel like a lot of things we talked about here tonight, it would also apply to political science in one way or another. But maybe that's a topic for another webinar, maybe one hosted by the political science department. Mary asks, what if you had a mental disorder? I think that's where the Career Center maybe has the best advice. I don't want to speak out of beyond my own experience or expertise here. Jonathan Lozano gives us the spells out the Center for Oral and Public History for us. Thank you. I think this is maybe the time where we bring this to an end. We had some good questions. I want to thank the panelists, the participants, Corinne, Jonathan, Lindsay, Eric, for being up late at night, for me late at night, and helping all our participants thinking about their future career paths. So a very quiet applause in 26 separate rooms all over Southern California. Thank you guys. Thank you very much. So I'm going to close this webinar now, and I want to urge you all to start networking, make connections. If you want to connect with any of these participants, please contact me, and then if they are happy to help you, they will respond to you. Okay? So I wish you all a good night. Thank you for participating, and thank you for sending us your very good questions.